if I didn't use my intuition, I may not live to see the next few years. I went from multi-six figures to zero in about 2 years. How can you go from this really successful woman to somebody who is lodging in somebody's home? If you've got your intuition, why would you need to figure that out? I'm a human being. Even though you're busy helping people, sometimes it's easier not to help yourselves.
What advice would you give to people that don't know what they're here to do and they can't connect with that and they're maybe feeling a little lost?
Just contact me.
Victoria Dioh, welcome to the Inspired by Show.
Thank you so much, my darling. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I can't believe I'm here.
I was just about to say the same thing. We've known each other for years.
Too long.
And you're finally here in the studio.
I am. Yeah, it's mad, isn't it? It's like, I keep telling people, whenever your name comes up, I always say, Chloe's known me before I came into the online space. So it's very different speaking to you than anybody else I've ever known.
It's also really weird interviewing someone I know so well, because I'm like, what would I ask Vic if I didn't know her? Because anyone listening or watching might not know you. So I'm dying to get into it, but also I think I can ask some interesting questions because I know you quite well.
You do know me quite well. And most importantly, is when we go out, we talk for hours. So we're going to try and sort of like condense all of that into...
Try as much as we can.
Try as much as we can, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So Vic, obviously, we know each other really well, but for anyone who doesn't know you, one of the biggest things that I find so inspiring about you is your intuition. You know, it's definitely been something that we've bonded over quite a lot. And it's a huge part of what you do personally and professionally. Where did your connection with your intuition come from?
I don't know. That's an easy question. I don't know. I really don't know. I believe that everybody has a form of intuition, but I believe that there's different levels of intuition. And if you lean into it enough, it just becomes a thing. Now, I remember when we met and I was probably at the lowest part of my life, and we both were, right? Like we're both literally clambering just to try and survive. And I think around that point, I realized that if I didn't use my intuition, I may not live to see the next few years. So I had to really embody that side of me to be able to survive.
Wow. And what was going on for you at that point?
God, I'd lost everything. So I used to be a head of work and director as well. I was a contractor. So I used to get hired to come into organizations and manage some of the most sexiest projects and programs around the world. For example, Olympics 2012, the Red Route, I got brought in to head MP's expenses, the infrastructure, the IT infrastructure side, I got brought in to head. So I'd been brought in to do some incredible pieces of work. And life was brilliant and I was earning a lot of money. And it happened so easily. So it wasn't as if I was aiming to be highly paid, but I knew I wanted to be highly paid and it just happened. And when that life stopped, that's when everything else started to flow. So the phone stopped ringing. I stopped working, and it was just the most inexplicable time of my life because nothing made sense. Normally you say, well, I can apply for a job and you get a job. I never used to apply for jobs. I just used to get headhunted. So most of my jobs were headhunted roles. And all of a sudden the phone stopped ringing and nothing would happen. And I lost everything. I went from multi-six figures to zero in about 2 years. And when you saw me, when we first met, we met at a Gary Vee event. I had spent my last £65 to go and see Gary Vee. And I don't know why I went to see him. And I remember you being at VIP and I was right at the back, like right at the last chair in a room of over 1,000 people. And I was sat there because that was all I could afford to actually be there at that time. I don't know how I got in, used the tube. I don't know how I paid for the tube to get there. So it was a really tough time. And I think in that space, the more I spoke to people, the more I helped people, it was very clear that I had something that most people didn't have. I had a level of intuition that people hadn't connected with yet. And people started paying me for me to help them, whether it was to find out whatever solution they needed to find for the current problem that they had, whether it was to get a level of fulfillment, some form of clarity or certainty. And I was that person. And people were like, oh my God, Vic, her intuition is second to none. And I didn't even know what that meant until people started to voice it. And then I started to see results in people's lives. And then I thought, oh, this could be something. But I still didn't take it seriously.
I remember so well. And I remember I had no idea really what was going on either, like what was happening. Like we'd only just met. And I remember you went on a journey of understanding your intuition. And I remember you kind of got pulled into it very fast and now, use it as a huge part of your life. What was the turning point for you with really tapping into that and accepting who you actually are?
You. Well, it was. I like the way you sit here and you're going, oh, well, this happened like so disconnected, but it all happened around you. If you think about it, you were doing so well. Like I remember I'd never met anybody who was building their life back up as quickly as you were. Like the infrastructure you set up around you was just incredible. But also you kept on inviting me to things and stuff. And at times I'd be like, I don't want to go. And you'd be like, no, come. So I remember the first time, I think the first time we went to somewhere, you invited me and we had a great time and that was fine. And then you and I went for dinner with your mum. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And we went for dinner and there was a really big music star there. I'm not going to mention his name, but there was a really big music star there. And I remember walking past him and he just dragged my hand and was like, I know you can tell me stuff. Like I can feel it. I know it. And I'm like, who are you? At the time I didn't realize it was him. And then he wouldn't leave me alone. And then you and your mom came and sat with us. And he was just like, you need to tell me what's going to happen. You need to tell me what's going to happen.
Now, I just wanted to quickly interrupt this episode to share a quick message with you. Now, I've been hosting these interviews with Inspired by Show for a while now, and I've been loving all of the great feedback from our listeners. And it really means a lot when you all share from listening to these episodes, watching these episodes, share your incredible feedback. And I love that you love it as much as we do. Now, my mission for the Inspired by Show is to inspire others to challenge the norm, share their story, knowing that it's okay to be vulnerable and, shock horror, take the mask off and be raw and real. So I have a favor to ask. Can you help me on this mission by sharing this episode with someone who you think needs to hear this message? Maybe there's a friend, a loved one, a colleague, or someone that you know that would really benefit from hearing this inspiring story. If you could do that to help us, help even more people to challenge the norm and push themselves out of their own comfort zone, then I'd really appreciate it. So if you haven't already, share this episode with a friend, a loved one, a colleague, or someone that you know would benefit. Now, back to the episode.
And incidents like that, and for some reason, you always seem to be in the mix of it. You always seem to be around it. And I think that was August of 2019. It was August 2019. And then shortly after, that same month, I went to a Tony Robbins event in Tenerife. And they had held my tickets that I'd bought previously for any of his events. They'd held those tickets for 3 years. They never do that. They normally hold your tickets for like 18 months and then you lose the tickets. But they kept on messaging me saying, it's okay, we've got you. You don't need to worry. Because I'm that person, I'm either in or out. And my first Tony Robbins event, I bought everything. And they were like, don't worry about it. We got you. Don't worry. And on that particular time, they actually sent me to Tenerife to go to an event. I ended up being on stage, ended up meeting this couple who was so engrossed with my story. And within 10 minutes of meeting them, they'd bought me a ticket to go to Cameroon, which is where my parents originate from. Because I'd said to them, I'm a healer. I've lost everything. I don't know what I'm doing. I can heal people. People are getting better. I don't know what it means for my life. I don't know where to start. And my sister called me a few hours ago to tell me there's a woman in Africa who does similar work to me. And I know that I need to go and meet this woman. And the man in this group started to do something with his hands. And I was like, what's he doing? And the woman, who's his wife, was like, oh, he's scanning. I don't know what that means. And he kept on doing his hands, moving his hands in and out. And he said, you need to go to Africa now. Now, I'm in the middle of Tenerife. And I've just about managed to pay for this trip that I'd gone to. I was having an amazing time. Cameroon was not on the plan anytime soon. And this guy kept on doing this. And he goes, you need to go now. And I started getting frustrated because I kept on saying to him, I will when I sort my finances out. And he was like, no, you need to go straight away. And I'm so glad that I didn't lose it with him, because the next thing he turned around, he got so frustrated with me as well. He said, can you give my wife your details? We're booking the flight tonight. And seriously, within minutes of meeting them, they booked me a flight. And I remember going, hang on. I can't just go to Cameroon now. And he said, October, first week of October, latest, you have to be on that flight. And on the 6th of October, I went to Cameroon to go and meet this woman who is my oracle. And as soon as I got to Cameroon, traveled another 8 hours to go and meet this woman, she saw me and she knew. And she said to my mum, you should have brought her here years ago. And she said to me, we've been waiting for you for a long time. And I spent 50 hours in the jungle, got anointed. And all of that just started to make sense, because as soon as I arrived, I was like, this is it. This all makes sense. You know, it's not fascinating anymore to have that intuition. It's not fascinating to know, to look at somebody and be able to see them, like really see them, or to be able to predict stuff, or to be able to heal them, because it just made sense. It just is. And I remember turning around to this woman on the second day and asking her, well, what am I doing here? Because initially I just wanted to go and see somebody who could understand what I was going through. And I remember sobbing. When she asked me my story. And I didn't realize how lonely it had been just to go through that, to go from multi-six figures to nothing, to go from somebody who people looked up to somebody who people were like, what's going on? Like, where's Vic? How does this work out? How can you go from this really successful woman to somebody who is lodging in somebody's home? And this woman looked at me as if I was really stupid. And she said, you're the next African Oracle. Like, this is your ceremony. So yeah, so that was the beginning of the embodiment of it all. And I took to it really well. Like, I thought it was hilarious, and I don't think I understood it while I was there. But I remember my head being so full of not questions but just of I just need time to absorb all of this. And I wanted to stay there as well. And this woman wouldn't let me. She was like, you have to go back to the white man country, she said. She was like, you need to go back there. And I was like, I don't understand how I can get anointed underneath the mountains of Africa and then have to come back here. And she's like, because that's where your work is. And I still get emotional even thinking about it. And eventually I left after crying again. And, you know, she's getting really frustrated with me, thinking, you need to stop crying. She's like, you need to stop crying. She goes, the ancestors are going to think I've pissed you off or something. She goes, you need to stop crying. And I remember heading back, and you sent me a message going, hey, there's this gala happening. It's a 2-day gala. And I'm going, I'm not going. And I remember sending you a message going, thanks, but no thanks. And you would not let it go. And you're like, no, I think you should come. My mum can't make it. And I was like, Chloe, this is not the time. And in the end, I was like, fine. No, actually, I got a message. I remember sort of like being on the flight, and I got this message through my ear And I can only describe it as God saying, from now on, when you get offered something, you say yes. And that's the only reason why I said yes to that invite. And I was not happy. To the point where I remember the night before you sent me a message going, are you excited? And I didn't respond. And I'm a responder. Like if you message me, I'll respond straight away. I didn't respond because I didn't trust to say, no, not really. So I was like, no, I don't want to go. I don't want to be there. But the most crazy thing is I walked in to that event. I was in Kensington, wasn't it? I remember walking in and bumping into somebody who we both now know, Marja and stuff. And I'd met Marja once for like seconds. And I had no designs on knowing her. I wasn't sure whether we aligned or not and stuff. So like I'd met her seconds in Amsterdam, but she saw me and she came and gave me the greatest hug. And then she started to confide in me. And it was almost like time stood still, because between her confiding in me and me walking into this room with you, we sat next to each other. And I remember Marja sat in front of me and she stood back up and she went, I've just received a message. And that's normally my line. And she went, I've just received a message. And she turns around and she goes, there's a platinum guest ticket. It's worth 150 grand, right? $150,000. And she goes, and it's yours if you want it. And it's like front row seats, Tony Robbins. I remember you being next to me and you literally almost fainting.
I remember being like, of course Vic's manifested this. Like, Vic manifests everything. This is amazing. I just used to watch in awe, like watching a movie.
Well, you were sat like there and you literally just went, and I just went, I'm not going to go. So get off. And you were like, and I turned around. I was really polite to her though. I said, look, I'll think about it, because it was like a 2 or 3 day event. I was like, I'll think about it and I'll let you know. But yeah, that trip completely changed my life. And it was all because of you, and you just arriving in my life and creating opportunities that I did eventually take, because that trip took me to America. As soon as I eventually said yes, because I didn't want to say yes, that same day, somebody gifted me a hotel room worth $8,000. But people that I know, my brand, some clients, some opportunities that I still get are as a result of that trip. Yeah.
It's incredible,
crazy.
isn't it?
It is incredible.
Every time we reminisce on this journey, really, it almost gives me shivers and almost tears, because I know where we both were when we met, and how low and vibrational and just like struggling and everything, and to see how it's a ripple effect of what can happen. But the thing I love, Vic, is that you've always, whether you've accepted it or not, you've always had the knack of attracting, like you walk in a room and people feel your energy. You walk in a room and people will offer you opportunities. And I honestly I'm just like, I just laugh now, because I'm like, it's always happening. And I find it fascinating. Like that musician that just happened to pull you over to the table. And I remember seeing Vic and being like, is she seriously out with him? And my mum was like, who is it? I was like, only Vic, you know, because it's one of those things. And I think I find it curious though, is the way you've always done that, even if you weren't aware. And would you say that is a part of tuning into your intuition, is the ability to manifest? Because that's been a huge part of what you've been able to achieve.
Yeah. Yes, it is. But so here's 2 things. I believe that everybody has got intuition. And I also believe that everybody has a purpose. Everybody was put on this earth for a reason. And I believe that in life, you will get shown your path in a number of ways. And to me, part of that was walking into a room and attracting those opportunities, because there's no explanation to it at all. Like sometimes you're like, are you kidding me? You know, half the stuff I get, I've not had to work for, which is probably why, sort of like building a business and stuff, I'm like, damn, this is a lot of work and stuff.
You're like, damn, I'm going back to the other stuff.
Yeah,
manifesting stuff, so much more fun.
Yeah, because like life has been quite flow-like, quite easy. And I see that there's a lot of opportunities that some people would kill for, and they just arrive. And when I talk about them, you can see the other person looking at you like, Are you serious? And I take it very lightly, I think, in some cases. But I've eventually accepted it, and accepting it has allowed me to really connect to my presence, but also to be mindful that the energy is that powerful. Because I used to just walk into a room and not even think about it. And so it can put some people off, as much as a lot of people do gravitate towards you. Some people can be like, that's just a lot right now. And I've still got people who won't work with me because they're like, do you know what? I am coming. I just need to get ready because it's a lot. I know how amazing you are. I know that when I work with you, I'll get the results that I want, but I need to prepare myself to get into it. And it has to do with me also understanding from my place of ego that I also need to be compassionate, because not everybody is connected to that power, or not everybody has that power in that particular area. I believe that we all have that power, but we have it in our chosen areas or in our God-given areas. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And you're right, though, it's because it shows up differently for everyone, doesn't it?
100%.
Also, it depends on if they're religious or not. If people are religious, they'll think it might be God. If people are not, they might think it might be universal or whatever, right? And I think it's just knowing that anyone can use their intuition if they want to.
Yeah, but listen, I believe... I don't understand how anybody can be on this earth and not want to know what they're here for. And I believe that secretly we all have that moment where we go, why am I here? Or am I doing the right thing? Or am I on the right path? It's the same thing. And it doesn't really matter what denomination you come from. Everybody wants to feel useful. Everybody wants to know that what they're doing is the right thing. And that's why you'll find that people who can be as wealthy as nonsense still end up having breakdowns, because it's not the money. It's about knowing why you are on this earth. It's the reason why it manifests into people turning into bullies, people turning into abusers, people putting people down. It's because there's that level of uncertainty in your life and you need to mask it. And also, we're a society of masking. We're a society of diluting our purpose and our intuition. Like, if you look at the news, it's always the news that has the most anxiety-ridden, emotional headlines that lead. So straight away, as soon as you absorb that content, what do? It's almost like little particles going into you. And by the end of the day, once you've read so many and heard so many and watched enough stuff on TV or whatever that keeps on feeding that anxiety emotion around you, by the end of the day, you're good for nobody, not even for yourself. But when you can stand in your power, when you know why you're here, you haven't got time to listen to all that noise, because you're so focused, because you know that you have a job to do. You know that there's people that you need to make sure, either to make people visible. You know that you need to heal people. You know that whatever your job is, whether your job is in construction, you're looking at the next design. You're not listening to what the newspapers are saying, or you choose what information you're going to absorb. When you're absorbing everything, it's because you really don't know what you're here to do.
Yeah, it's so true, isn't it? And I think, isn't it interesting though, like looking at it from your perspective now, where you've got so much certainty around it?
Yeah.
Because isn't it fascinating to look back and go, oh, it always made sense, but for whatever reason, I couldn't see it. What advice would you give to people that maybe are listening or watching that don't know what they're here to do and they can't connect with that and they're maybe feeling a little lost?
Just contact me. The thing is, that's my job. I help you to contact your purpose very, very quickly. I run a workshop at the moment called Ignite Your Intuition. And what's so great about it is within 2 hours, everybody who attends connects to their purpose. Everybody who attends connects to their intuition. It's phenomenal. But also, here's my advice. Even if you don't come and see me, acknowledge this, that your purpose has known you for years. And all you need to do is open the door and welcome it in. So a lot of the time, when people connect to their purpose, they go, I've been doing this for years, but maybe not in the dish that you've seen it in. I talk a lot about food. So, it's maybe not in the dish that you've seen it in, but also there's a difference between knowing your purpose and embodying it. So a lot of people will know their purpose and go, yep, I know what I'm meant to do. My purpose is cooking, blah, blah. But the embodiment of it is something very different. And when people see me, they're attracted to something. They're attracted to the embodiment of my purpose and my intuition. It may not necessarily be the body of Victoria. It's the embodiment of, because that's what holds true. So if I say to somebody, look, this is what I do. I'm an intuit, I'm a seer, I'm a healer. Nobody will ever argue that because I completely embody it. I don't need to convince somebody about it.
Yeah. And that's what I find fascinating about when you are certain about something and you know what you need, it's fascinating how other people react to that, right? Because some people who are not as certain are quite negative or jealous or fearful even. What experience have you had, Vic, in this new version of yourself where you've got this purpose and you've now really embodied it? And how have other people taken that around you?
Do you know what's so interesting? Nobody has been negative. Which is really, and I really expected it, especially from, my parents were all Christians. My dad was an elder in church. My dad was an accountant in church. He was in the choir. My mom was the choir president. My mom was an you're talking people who literally walk the walk and talk the talk, like they're in it. And it's just so ironical that I come out as a healer. But not one person ever questioned it. My mum would listen to my stories and she would hear all these stories of me healing people, from people who've been locked into psychiatric units, me never meeting them and getting them out by doing healing on them, to doctors who could no longer practice. And after working with me for a few weeks, they get offered, multiple jobs for multiple hospitals and then go back into being fully fledged doctors. I'm talking incredible pieces of work. And my mom would just listen. And I think my mom eventually bought into me when I went to Cameroon, funnily enough, to go and meet the Oracle. And my mom was really ill. Nobody knew what was wrong with her. The doctors had tried to figure it out. And I said to her, will you let me heal you? And my mom was really dubious. And I was like, well, nothing else is working. When I worked on my mom, and my mom got better, my mom was stunned. And then I also worked with her doctor. And when my mom saw the work I did with her doctor, my mom couldn't believe it. Now my mom's my biggest champion. Like she refers people to me all the time. And I'm talking real complex issues with people who I've never met. And I will do work on them and stuff. We have a consultation online. I'll do the work. And it's all done. So I haven't had anybody really, think to me, or say to me, we don't agree with this. I remember, let me tell you a story. There was one where I really thought that my vicar or the church were not going to agree with what I did. And I decided one day to talk to my vicar. I was like, I need to speak to him because if I can't hide this, whatever this is, I can't hide it. But also equally, if they don't think I should be a member of this church, I'm not going to fight that either. I'm prepared to leave this church and go find another church where I'll be accepted. And on the day I went to see the vicar, I'd gone to an early service. So this early service lasts 30 minutes. There's no hymns there. It's pure the Bible and readings and everything else. And the day I went to church to speak to him, the gospel that was being read was all about God saying, if you have a purpose and a gift, you have to share it with the world. And I remember being at church going, what is going on? I was freaking out in my chair. And then I got nervous because I was like, I don't know how I'm going to mention this to Ed. So after the service, I said to him, look, I need to speak to you, but maybe today's not a good day. And he said, no, let's sit down and talk. So I just said to him, listen, I get visions. and I heal people. Have you got anything to say about that? And he went, oh, Vicky, he calls me Vicky. One of the few people calls me Vicky. He goes, oh, Vicky, that's amazing. He goes, oh, that's wonderful. He goes, Mary had visions in the Bible. And he was telling me about all these people in the Bible. And he was like, he goes, that's incredible. He goes, he goes, it's so normal. He goes, but society tries to make it something that it's not. He goes, as long as you use it for good. He goes, I'm so happy. And he is one of my biggest fans. He watches everything I do. He promotes, like, he literally is just so proud of the work that I do. Yeah. Wow. So no, nobody has, not to my face anyway, has said, oh, we don't think that what you're doing should be discredited in any way. And it's actually, funnily enough, everybody who I've mentioned or who I've said to, look, this is what I do in the early days, were like, oh yeah, that makes sense now. Yeah, oh, of course you are. Those were the two responses that I would get, which is fascinating because, again, your purpose finds you way before you ever find your purpose. So people couldn't articulate it, but they knew there was something different about me. And now it all makes sense.
Yeah, I'm almost certain I was the second batch of people. I was like, of course you are. I remember literally just thinking that when you first told me. And I think, isn't it interesting though, that we can assume we're going to get a certain reaction and then we don't?
Yeah, because it was just so out there. I said this to somebody a few months ago, that if I didn't do the work I did, and if I hadn't seen the results, I don't think I'd believe me. Because there's no logic to it whatsoever. It's just crazy. The people that I've helped, the opportunities that I've created for myself. Up until about 2 weeks ago, I attended an online event, and we're being talked to about being visible online. And I'm quite visible. But there's certain things that I take for granted, certain stories in my life that I take for granted. And this girl was saying, oh, if you've spoken on so-and-so stage, you should mention it, blah, blah. And it dawned on me that I'd spoken on Tony Robbins' stage and I'd completely forgotten about it.
Whereas Vic, a few years ago, would have loved to even be in the room, let alone be on the stage.
Girl. And I was like, huh. And there's pictures and everything and stuff. And I'd completely forgotten about it. And she was like, oh, you should use that. I was like, maybe I should. So I put a post out there the other day, and I mentioned the person who got me on stage and tagged her on it. And she was like, oh my God, I love you. And I'm so excited. I was like, Vic, those are things that you take for granted. Opportunities where, because so many happen, you don't see it as a big deal. And it is a big deal because you got brought on to tell this story. That's the reason I got brought on there. They were like, tell this story. So in a way, I think sometimes I do take it for granted and I try not to. It's one of the reasons why I do gratitude quite a lot. Every morning, I try and, even if I give gratitude just for my home, I remember when I met you, I didn't have the key to a front door. I had to share that with 3 other people. And I missed the days when I had my own space. And while some people were praying for £1 million, I was just praying for the keys to my own front door. And now that I have it, it never escapes me every time I go home and go, nobody else is going to walk through that door. Nobody else, because it's mine. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it does humble you, for sure. It humbles you. But I tell you what, every morning when I wake up, I know why I'm here. Even if I don't want to do something, I know the job I have to do. I know who I'm responsible for. And it's really taught me how to be compassionate, because I wasn't compassionate before, and I still have to learn to be compassionate, but it's taught me how to really align to people and see people rather than just assume around people. You know what I mean?
Definitely. Yeah. It's so easy, I think, as well, to get caught up in the whirlwind, of, and you'll believe in this just as much as I do, but often when you're stuck in what I would call the trenches, everything feels like it's pulling you down. And then when you start getting lighter, things just start to click into place, don't they? Yeah. Because I believe it's mindset, and we open our minds and everything else. But a lot of people feel like it's then once you've fixed the shit, it's a straight and narrow.
No,
which it never is,
No.
right? And I get a bit frustrated when I hear people go, "Yeah, it's all been perfect
No.
since then." But Vic, I love your honesty. So I'm curious, what would you say has been the biggest challenge you've had since becoming an oracle and really opening your mind to all of this?
For me, the biggest challenge is turning it into a business that just works for itself. It's really like, I can't explain to you. I every day I feel like I'm being tested every single day. But what I do know for sure is when you find your purpose, that's just the beginning. So if anybody's coming to me to think, oh, well, help me find my purpose and then life's going to be perfect, just don't bother coming, because the job I do is help you find your purpose and then help guide you through so that you don't self-sabotage, because it's so easily for you to go, I'm done. It's so, like, I was on the tube today coming here and I said to you, I fell asleep on the tube because I didn't realize how tired I was. Like, my body just went, a few minutes where I don't have to switch on a computer or speak to anybody. The challenge is having to grow this thing to something that can be sustainable for people, and also to create a legacy even when you're not here, for people to be able to sort of like go, do you know what? I'm going to go back and listen to what Vic told me, or what guidance Vic gave me, or or be able to work with Vic at some point. All that information and collecting it is a lot of work, and when you're doing it on your own, it takes its toll on you. So that, for me, that's the biggest challenge. But also remembering why you're here. That, whilst I never forget it, sometimes there are little reminding. So, for example, I was today on the tube. I can't remember, something clicked, and I have a free group. And I was like, when was the last time you did any healing in there? And it's not about necessarily doing healing and taking people's physical pain away. It could also be emotional pain. Now, I do talk on there quite a bit, but I talk on there and I was like, oh, maybe you need to just change a bit of the tone there slightly. Just those little reminders, are so good, because the challenge is hitting the right spot all the time. Now, somebody could say, well, if you've got your intuition, why would you need to figure that out? I'm a human being. And whether you like it or not, life happens. And when life happens, even though you're busy helping people, sometimes it's easier not to help yourself. So sometimes you're using your head to do the things that to solve issues, and you might miss a point. So it's always nice to actually come back to yourself and just remind yourself that, remember why you're here. You're here to heal the world one person at a time, so that they can really connect and embody their intuition and purpose, so that they can have a life of wealth, whether it's physical, emotional, psychological, whatever that looks like. That's why you're here. So everything that you say, everything that you do, how you act needs to embody that. But remember as well that you are human. So you're allowed to make mistakes and you're allowed to have fun. You know what I mean? So for me, those are the challenges.
Yeah. I love your honesty, Vic, as always. Like, honestly, I just know you'll always be honest with what you've experienced. I think that's important as well, because I think a lot of people, and I mean, you are, let's be honest, an African oracle. So already people are going, oh my gosh, wow. But I think a lot of people often feel that people that sit in these chairs are like superhuman. Like, we've been through the shit and now we're on the straight and narrow. And it's never the case, as I said earlier. And I think it's important to share that we can sometimes still have challenges. And one of the things you've shared there is not feeling alone in it, because it's so easy, especially because your business is very much you constantly supporting and giving. You've got to make sure you've got people around you. And one of the ways I look at that is who inspires me. So I'm curious for you, Vic, on your journey so far, who would you say you've looked up to, or who's inspired you on your journey so far?
I was thinking about this. So it can't be one person. And I'll tell you why. Because we've all got stuff going on. And again, I get emotional even thinking about this. But when I look at people's stories, so I wasn't a poor kid. My parents weren't poor. But I know people who have had to come through the trenches to get to where they are. people like that always sort of, oh God, people like that always, sort of like, I look at them and go, I don't know how you got there. You know what I mean? So it can't be one person, because so many people inspire me. And they're not necessarily the people that have made it. They're probably the people who are still clambering to try and get there. But, it's the woman who was told she was not good enough and has now managed to create something for her, whether it's a job, whether it's a business. It's the girl who was bullied, or the guy that was bullied or abused. It's those people that can keep on getting up no matter what and go, do you know what, today's another day and I'm going to try and make the best of it. Those are the people that inspire me. So it's a face of many faces. It's not one particular person, because, here's the thing. Anybody who comes and sits here or anywhere and says that they don't have stuff going on, or they have stuff going on for marketing purposes, you don't want to talk to, because they're talking crap, right? We're human beings. That's who we are first. So we all have work to do. I always say, if you find someone who can help you who doesn't have a teacher, run. Everybody has to have a teacher. And the only perfect people that you meet and see are people you don't know very well. Yeah. And once you get to know us, you realize that we've got all those chinks in our armor, left, right, and center. And it's a choice to wake up every day and just, keep doing what you're put on this earth to do. And that's why it's so important to understand why you're put on this earth, because when shit hits the fan, that's the only currency that's going to be authentic to you. But if you don't have your purpose and you don't have your intuition, then you're literally a lost soul.
Yeah, I've seen it happen to so many people.
Yeah.
And that's where they have like wobbles in business, and then they go, oh no, I'm going to give it up, or I'm going to get a job, or I'm going to do this. And it's actually just trying to put a plaster on top of the problem instead of actually peeling it off and going, we need this scar to heal. We need this wound to heal, Yeah. And I think that's the challenge, is so many people don't want to talk about the shit that's going on. I feel like I'm far too much of an open book. Everybody knows my shit. Like, it's here you go. This is what's going on.
What's so interesting is, a few weeks ago, I was speaking to a mentor, and he said something. And to be fair, what he said was not bad. But in my emotional state, so this is what happens when you use your head. In my emotional state, I was like, and I remember getting emotional, not in front of him, but I remember afterwards I sobbed and I was like, I'm closing the business. I'm not going to use the business. And this voice just came and went, and do what? And do what, Victoria? Like, this is what you're put on this earth to. It's like, oh yeah, all right then, okay. And it was so funny because, again, when I connected to myself again, it was like, actually what he said was true, and it's actually not that bad. And the next day when I spoke to him, he goes, oh my God, he goes, you've sorted it out. I was like, yeah. And all of a sudden I wasn't getting rid of the business anymore and stuff. But is that point, if you're prepared to give up your business, then the business wasn't yours in the first place. You know what I mean? And it's okay to sell your business. I'm talking about giving away what you believe is your God-given gift. Does that make sense?
100%. Yeah. Because I think so many people who often know what their gift is, or what I would have called their genius.
Yes.
They either don't believe it, they sabotage it, or they just think, oh no, I'll find something else, because of other people or themselves, or actually just because it's really hard work. Like you said, just because you know it doesn't mean you're going to be like, okay, it's all just going to magically flow to me. Like we're all human, right?
Yeah, well, you don't embody it. It's really funny, actually. I was on the phone earlier on when I got here, and this has happened to somebody I know. Like, literally, they're in hospital right now. They know their purpose. They're trying to embody it. They can't handle it. And it has manifested in a serious breakdown. And I just got given the news just as I got here.
Wow.
And it happens. And people don't realize how important it is. It's like little particles being disseminated from your system if you are not aligned with who you are. And that's not the dresses you wear. It's not the hairstyle you've got. This is your core. So it's I'm obsessed with getting people to find out why they're here. Like, even if I get in a taxi, I'm like, so when you're not driving a taxi, what do you do? I love it. And there's always the driver. There's always the taxi driver who will eventually go, I've been doing this all my life. I can tell you this. And you go, okay, this is yours. This is your gig. And then you've got somebody else who'll say, oh, well, I do fashion shows when I'm not here. And I'm like, I'm obsessed because it can save your life. And this is what I don't think people realize. A lot of people assume that connecting to your intuition, and I think it's because of the airy-fairy woo-woo that gets connected to it. A lot of people think that connecting to your intuition or even finding your purpose is a nice to have. It's not. It's a necessity. And the sooner we start getting onto the bandwagon on that and realizing that within companies, within businesses, in our homes, that this is an important factor, nothing's going to change. We're going to keep on getting ill. We're going to keep on having breakdowns. We're going to keep on self-sabotaging. And until we learn how to be more powerful and take our power back, because that's what your intuition is. Your intuition and your purpose is your power. It's your God-given power. You need to sort of like harness it, ride with it, run with it, make the mistakes with it, because here's the thing, you are going to get tested, but you're going to be more powerful and more resilient with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And I love your passion, Vic. Like, your passion coming through of this topic is like, she's like, oh, I just love doing this. You can tell. You attract the right people for it. And also you're just a beacon of it in terms of your passion. So obviously I'm a book publisher. My next question is going to be, Vic, when is the book coming? When are we going to get a book on how to do this?
Well, do you know what? I've been asked about a book probably for about 7 years, and I don't know. For some reason, I just feel like when the book's ready, it'll come. I don't know if this book will ever be about me. I don't know if it'll be about what I want to teach. I'd love something to be out there to help people with their journey. And whether it's about my story or whether it's about the principles of what I teach, who knows? But it's a bit like PR, right? So up until last year, I was like, I'm not too fussed about PR. Now I've gone all the way into PR and stuff. So we'll see. I don't know. I just have no idea. I just think it has to be not perfect, but it has to be right. It has to align. And I have a vision for what I want to create, whatever that's going to look like. I know how I want it to be used. And that has to happen, because I see people with books and people use books in different ways. For me, I know exactly how I want to use my book if the book comes out or whatever else comes out alongside that. And I also don't want it to be something that's another thing. I don't want to create a book just for the sake of creating a book. I don't need to be an author. Does that make sense? But when the book comes out, it's because it had to be there, as opposed to, I'm an author, so to speak. So, yeah. Yeah,
I could not agree with you more. I think there are so many people out there, and I'm a publisher, so this is really ironic coming from me, but there are so many people out there that are writing a book just to tick the box. I want the best-selling author badge tick. No. And actually, yes, it can do all those amazing things, and it can help you build your brand, like PR. It can help you, really explode and people know who you are.
Yeah.
But if it's not for the right reasons, like our brand is inspired by publishing, and we push away people a lot that are just more wanting it to tick the box, and I'm just going to get AI to write it and I'm going to get it published. It's like, no, this needs to be your core, right? And I have a feeling that when your book will come out, it'll be the right time, and it will be all about everything you shared today.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. But I'm seeing your clients all over the place going, Chloë and the team are sort of like, they're kicking my ass to write all these things and stuff. So I'm seeing the work that you're doing, which is incredible.
Oh, thank you so much, lovely. Well, I'm looking forward to working on your book whenever you're ready. Yay. But we'll definitely give you some time to really reflect on that. Vic, it's been so good having you in the show. It's been amazing.
Thanks,
and I think, the fact that we're doing well for time, I'm so impressed with us.
Are we? Oh,
we'll be doing very good. So yeah, I'm amazed that we managed to share so much, and thank you for being so honest and transparent as always. We have a tradition on the show to ask our guests always one last question.
Yes.
Who do you know that has an inspiring story that you think we should have on the show next?
I'm going to mention somebody who is a mentor for me, and she's incredible. And she's probably been suggested before, but Lisa Johnson. You need to get Lisa Johnson on because her story is incredible. And I don't know anybody who's doing what she's doing at the moment. She's literally knocking it out of the ballpark, left, right, and center. But again, you know, just a great human being, not just from a business perspective, but also from a friendship perspective as well. And I think you'll just have so much fun speaking to her.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, let's make it happen with Lisa. I'm very excited. Well, Vic, I've said it before, but thank you so much, love. It means so much to me that you've come here. And we finally made it happen. Yay! Thanks again, lovely.
Thanks so much, my love.
So that is the end of this week's episode. I hope you have enjoyed it as much as I have. And I'd love to know what you've taken away from this episode with Vic. Share in the comments if you're watching on YouTube. What was the biggest golden nugget or takeaway you took? What was the most inspiring thing that you heard Vic say? There was a lot, so I hope you're taking some notes. Now, if you are listening on all the usual podcast platforms, Apple, Spotify, or watching on YouTube, make sure you don't forget to subscribe if you're not already on the show so you don't miss out on our next inspiring guest. I'll see you next week.